going to send you out your way. We take you places, we teach you new things, and we make you feel like, you know, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
Tonight, what is former Trump challenger Nikki Haley expected to say in her convention speech? Nora O'Donnell previews day 2. And how would a Trump-Vance White House run the country? Then, a major cooldown is on the way for some after triple-digit heat on the CBS Evening.
Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett, and welcome to a special edition of America Decides for Night 2 of the Republican National Convention. If you were with us yesterday, and I certainly thank you if you were, you'll remember it was a bit louder when we were on at this time of day. The band was playing, the delegates were on the floor. There was a lot of news. Vice presidential pick J.D. Vance. It's a little quieter right now because the festivities, such as they are, won't begin until a little bit later this evening. But we've got a full show right now, and we're very happy to bring it to you. As you well remember from last night, former President Trump officially became the Republican Party nominee for the 3rd consecutive presidential cycle. That is history. Tonight, the party's theme, and there's always a theme to every night of a national party convention. The theme for Republicans tonight, safety, and that focus will be on crime and the southern border in particular. That thematic approach comes as the investigation into the assassination attempt against former President Trump that occurred Saturday. Well, that investigation continues, and if anything, is intensifying. Lots of speakers tonight, of course. Many of them were, at one time, rivals of former President Trump for Republican voters during the primaries and caucuses. Among them, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, businessman Vivek Ramaswamy, and perhaps most notably, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. Haley was added to the speaking lineup after Saturday's shooting in what the Trump campaign told me and others was an effort to broaden the sense of party outreach. I want to bring in Caitlin Huey-Burns, who is with me here in Milwaukee. And Control, if I can do me a favor and kill the music in my ear. Thank you very much. 4 hours of the orchestra for America Decides was just a little too much for me.
We'll get the band to play it tonight for you.
Exactly. No offense to the America Decides Orchestra. They're wonderful. Caitlin, it's great to see you. I want to play you a soundbite from an interview with Jason Miller, who is a campaign spokesman for the Trump campaign. It's about J.D. Vance. And why I want to play it is it sort of describes the J.D. Vance of 2016, an arch critic of former President Trump, and the new J.D. Vance. Let's listen.
Well, J.D. Vance is someone who, as he said last night in his interview with Sean Hannity, had listened to too many of the media's lies early on and not had a chance to meet President Trump or get to know him. But as he saw that first-term success with President Trump, as we brought about this great economy, as we secured the border, brought about world peace in so many different areas, he realized this was someone who actually matched his value set and agreed with him very much so.
The reason I bring that up, Caitlin, is because it describes J.D. Vance, now the running mate for President Trump, as a dupe in 2016, mindlessly influenced by media lies, not someone who made his own independent assessment of candidate Trump back then. That strikes me as a borderline insult of J.D. Vance, and also a kind of blame shifting that is very typical of the Trump campaign, but doesn't oftentimes hold up to scrutiny.
And it's notable, too, because one of the big selling points for Vance for the Trump campaign was that he is great on television. He's great on the debate stage, defending Donald Trump to their liking. But it was notable yesterday when J.D. Vance gave his first interview as the vice presidential pick, because he kind of acknowledged that as well. He said, I was wrong, and I recognized my mistakes, and I corrected them, essentially. And I was speaking to a Trump ally earlier today who said that that is the kind of voter that they are trying to reach, those kinds of people who may not have gotten Trump before and may be inclined to do so now.
May be inclined to cross over in ways they wouldn't have imagined 6 months ago or even maybe 6 weeks ago. I want to talk to you quickly about Nikki Haley tonight, added to the convention schedule. She was at the podium this afternoon, preparing for tonight's address. What are you expecting from Nikki Haley?
Well, she was added late to the list, as you mentioned there. It is difficult, having covered her for so long, to imagine her on this stage for two reasons. One, she was the last woman standing against Donald Trump. And talking about criticisms of the Republican nominee, she waged many serious criticisms of him. And then, came around. And to your point, a big theme of this convention is unity, of course, but those who, were kind of against Donald Trump before. Now, what I also think is significant here is that the Republican Party base is not inclined to Nikki Haley. Over and over again, when I was at Trump rallies or at other political events, voters would kind of mention her by name as someone that they did not want to consider. They saw her...
Didn't trust her,
exactly. And especially on foreign policy, which is interesting because that's going to be a theme tonight. A very different foreign policy, especially when it comes to Ukraine, than is being put forth by Trump and also, of course, by Vance.
And it is worth noting that during that campaign, when former President Trump spoke of Nikki Haley, he frequently used the dismissive term, bird brain, and even at times late in the campaign questioned the solidity of her marriage. I mean, it was really nasty stuff.
It was really nasty stuff. And when she essentially endorsed Donald Trump, she didn't necessarily get anything for it. She actually had some political capital. In the primaries, after she had dropped out of the race, she was still getting recognizable significant portions of suburban voters, those very voters that Donald Trump needs to win back, that Republicans have been hemorrhaging. And that's been kind of the big question, is where do those voters go? And everything we've seen over the past couple of weeks since that debate, Trump campaign is confident that some of those voters will come home. We'll see if that is kind of the closing argument for Haley tonight.
How does Nikki Haley read the room? How does the room respond to Nikki Haley? That'll be a thing to watch tonight. Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you so very much. A jury today, this is really big news. Pay attention. Convicted New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez on all 16 counts in his federal corruption trial. Those counts included bribery, extortion, and acting as a foreign agent. That's a pretty significant charge. The last one, considering Senator Menendez, when charged, was the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. All of the allegations surrounded a scheme that federal prosecutors said involved accepting bribes and including, among those bribes, accepting gold bars and cash. That in exchange for assisting foreign governments. Sentencing for Senator Menendez has been scheduled for October 29th. I want to bring in our Nicole Killian for more from Capitol Hill. Nicole.
Yeah, well, Major, as you mentioned, this is a pretty significant development. This trial spanned nearly 2 months, resulting in a guilty verdict against Senator Bob Menendez and 2 of his business associates. The senator still today, though, emerged from court relatively defiant and undeterred, saying that he is a patriot, that he has lived up to his oath of office. His attorneys said that they are disappointed with the outcome and vowed to appeal and say they believe that the senator will ultimately be vindicated. But these are very serious charges, ranging from bribery to obstruction of justice, extortion, a wire fraud. These are all charges that carry a collective penalty of more than 200 years behind bars. Keep in mind, Senator Menendez is 70 years old. He is into his 3rd term here in the U.S. Senate. And following today's verdict, there was a crescendo of calls for him to immediately resign, from Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer down to New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, who said that if the senator does not resign, that he should be expelled from the Senate, and that he is ready to name a temporary replacement. So there's a lot of pressure right now on the senator to resign. As you know, he is running for re-election as an independent, but earlier today, his Democratic challenger, Andy Kim, renewed his calls for the senator to step down and told me that he believes the senator should not be on the ballot. Major.
Nicole, very quickly, is there a process within the Senate to expel Senator Menendez, and any serious talk being given to that?
Well, there is. I mean, a number of his Senate colleagues, including Senator John Tester, Senator Jackie Rosen of Nevada, are among those calling for his expulsion. We have certainly seen that process transpire in the House as recently as late last year with Congressman George Santos. We also know that the Senate Ethics Committee has been investigating Senator Menendez. They rarely issue statements, but today they said they plan to expedite their investigation. Major.
Nicole Killian on Capitol Hill for us. Thank you so very much. As the Republican National Committee gathers right here in Milwaukee for its convention, President Biden heads out west for a little bit of political counter-programming. We'll take a closer look at that next. You're streaming America Decides.
Coming up, our series. Wait a minute. Tom, is that you working the camera?
Keep leaning out of your close-up.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
That Desired Farm is a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
The American people aren't stupid. They know the system is broken. We all know how Washington is run. Working people have no chance of winning this fight. That's why I'm here today, because I refuse to keep doing the same things my predecessors did.
Welcome back to America Decides. That was during the first night of the Republican National Convention here in Milwaukee. Teamsters President Sean O'Brien. I want to go down to the floor of the convention here in Milwaukee, the Fiserv Forum, to Robert Costa, who joins us now. Robert, what are your expectations for this evening, and what reporting do you have to share with our audience about what's transpired here on day 2 of the convention?
Great to be with you, Major. I just spoke with a continuing Trump critic, former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, who challenged former President Trump for the nomination, also ran against former Ambassador Nikki Haley. He's hoping that Haley still outlines a path for traditional Republicans in the party, but even he, as a Trump critic, believes that ultimately tonight, former Ambassador Haley will give a full-throated endorsement for President Trump, that he believes that this is a time for Haley to come around, even though she has these concerns about Trump's conduct and legal challenges. This is a fragile moment, though, for the Republican Party. I'm sensing on the floor here, talking to delegates, they're happy Haley is here, though there are still some wounds left over from the primary campaign. At the same time, there's an expectation by showing up, this is not going to be some kind of Ted Cruz moment like the Texas senator had in 2016, where he said, vote your conscience, and didn't really endorse Trump. They expect Haley to endorse Trump tonight, especially in the wake of the assassination attempt over the weekend. But it was interesting to talk to former Governor Hutchinson to hear that there are still those in the party who say because of the legal challenges, because of everything that's happened in the past, he doesn't believe that Trump's well-positioned to win in November. That's a rare point, though, here on the convention floor. Major?
Robert Costa, thank you so much for that new reporting. Appreciate that. Meanwhile, President Biden is busy drumming up support in the battleground state of Nevada. We're looking at President Biden giving remarks right now, speaking at the 115th National Convention of the NAACP in Las Vegas. Quentin Folks is here in Milwaukee. Quentin is the principal deputy campaign manager for the Biden campaign. Quentin, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. Give me your assessment from the Biden-Harris campaign's perspective on day one of the Republican National Convention.
Well, thank you for having me, Major. It's always a pleasure to be with you. Look, I mean, I think we saw yesterday Republicans do exactly what we thought they would. We believed that they would go to Milwaukee or come to Milwaukee and double down on an extreme divisive agenda that is one of taking away rights from millions of Americans, doubling down on policies that are out of touch, putting the wealthiest and big corporations ahead of the middle class, doubling down on ripping away health care from American citizens, doubling down on making sure that Big Pharma is allowed to continue to cheat Americans and charge exorbitant prices. So unfortunately, they did exactly what we thought. And it had been rumored for months that Donald Trump was looking at J.D. Vance for a potential VP nominee pick, and he confirmed that. And obviously, J.D. Vance is just a rubber stamp for Donald Trump. I think it's important that American voters take a step back and ask themselves why Donald Trump had to pick a new vice presidential nominee. It is because his first one would not certify the results of a legitimate election, and J.D. Vance has said that he would do as such. And so I think we saw exactly what we had been anticipating from the Republican Party for many, many weeks.
Quentin, as you well know, last night the conversation around J.D. Vance and his potential political value to the Trump ticket was because of his upbringing in Ohio, because of the book Hillbilly Elegy and the movie made about that, he can speak in ways that maybe Trump can't. That is a persuasive pitch to voters specifically in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Evaluate that.
They only know one language, and that's MAGA extremism. It is both of them doubling down. He will continue to do just as Donald Trump said. He's not in the business of correcting Trump or moderating Trump on any of these issues. In fact, he might be even more extreme. I mean, when talking about abortion in cases of rape and incest for women to get those type of treatments after those incidents, he said 2 wrongs don't make a right. He has doubled down on some of the most out-of-touch policy stances, and I think that we're going to continue to see him stand right beside Donald Trump's side in opposition to what he said. So I think it's interesting that he's lost his morals and his character now that he's been named VP, because that's not what he was saying several months ago or a couple of years ago when he was running for office.
Quentin, I know you know this phrase. Let's listen to the principal. The principal in this case would be President Biden. He's in Las Vegas. Let's listen in.
Any one president has in one term. He left no room for us to do what we should be doing. Invest in things that affect people's lives, like child care, elder care, and so much more, that grow the economy and help people. His mismanagement of the pandemic was especially devastating to black communities. Oh, I know, because in other countries, other communities of color. That economic crisis drove up black unemployment, decimated small black businesses, and you peacefully protested George Floyd's murder. Donald Trump called for the National Guard to go after you. What in the hell's the matter with this man? Oh, I'm serious. Go figure. From a guy who spread the birthism lie against Barack Obama, saying he wasn't born in America and he wasn't a U.S. citizen. Of course, here's what he thinks of black jobs. I love his phrase, black jobs. It tells a lot about the man and about his character. Folks, I know what a black job is. It's a vice president of the United States. I know what a black job is. The first black president in American history, Barack Obama. I was vice president to Barack, and she is my vice president. I nominated the first black Secretary of Defense in American history. He's doing one hell of a job. I nominated the first black woman to the United States Supreme Court. It matters. It matters. And I promised myself, and I promised America, that my administration would look like America. And I'm proud that we have the most diverse administration in all of history that taps into the full talents of our nation. That's who we are. These guys don't get it. That's why we're so successful. No, I'm serious. That's what makes us the greatest nation on earth. That's not hyperbole. Folks, it's because of you that I'm president and Kamala Harris is vice president. And by the way, she's not only a great vice president, she could be president of the United States. Thank you. With the help of the NAACP, the black elected members in the Congress, we've gotten so much done. Seriously. Presidential historian said we've gotten more done of consequence than any president since Franklin Roosevelt. Just think about where the black community was when I came into office. Think about how far the black community has come. But we still got a long way to go. COVID no longer controls our lives. Our economy is not figuratively, literally, the strongest economy in the world. Historic low black unemployment. Record growth of black small businesses. Let me say this again, because Trump is lying like hell about it. The black unemployment hit a record low under Biden-Harris administration. The first bill I passed would put $1,400 checks plus $300 checks per child, per family, per month in the pockets of people in this country to get them through the pandemic. Not Trump's administration. Kamala and I did that. We put more money in the pockets of than anyone. We cut black, and as a consequence, we cut black child poverty in half. And when we finally get through to people, my economic policy grows the economy when we spend money. Grows it. We grew the American economy to the strongest in the world. And I'm determined to make that tax cut permanent. No child should ever go hungry in America. And by the way, all the data shows is they can't let them tell us we drive up deficits. They drive up deficits, folks. When you have child care, guess what? Mom or dad can work. And the child can be safe. We're connecting black neighborhoods that were cut off with old highways and disinvestment decades ago. My city, Wilmington, Delaware, I-95 runs up through what used to be the black community, divided it, 6 lanes wide. We're going to make sure that the states want it. We're going to be able to pave over at the top of that and still have the highway. Connecting neighborhoods. We're removing, which is costly, every poisonous lead pipe in a house in America so every child can drink clean water without fear of brain damage. We're delivering high-speed and affordable broadband. No child should have to sit out in the parking lot with their moms in front of a McDonald's so they can get online to do their homework. And because of you, you're not only protecting Obamacare, you allowed me to increase it, making health care more affordable. We're putting, and by the way, more than it's ever been, millions of African Americans now have health care because of what we've done. We're putting home ownership within reach. How do you generate generational wealth, no matter what community you're from? I know how we did it when everything got stuck in Scranton and with no jobs. Moved to Delaware. Dad worked like hell so he could get down payment to buy a small house. That's how you build equity. As small as a 3-bedroom split-level home with 4 kids and a grandpa living with us. But it was a home, and he was able to build some equity. Look, we're making the most significant investment in climate ever in all of history. Including most significant action on environmental justice ever. Look, folks, Think about this. My state of Delaware, not many don't know my state. My state of Delaware has a Delaware River runs up along, it's jagged. But at the top of the state, there's a half moon. And it comes up along more oil refineries on the other side of that half moon.
We're going to go back to our conversation with Principal Deputy Campaign Manager Quentin Folks of the Biden-Harris campaign. Quentin, you've been listening to President Biden address the 115th convention of the NAACP. A moment ago, the president leaned, I think, with some new rhetorical flourishes into the concept of something that former President Trump said at the first debate, black jobs. Your reaction, is that something that voters are going to hear more and more of from the president?
Absolutely, and I think it's quite a difference in between where these candidates choose to spend their time and who they spend their time talking to. Donald Trump continues to double down on racist tropes, continuing to think that he can win over black voters by selling sneakers and cologne and saying that they are with him because he is a convicted felon versus what you just heard President Biden lay out. And I think that it's very, very clear that when Donald Trump talks about black jobs, he means menial labor. As he relates it to immigrants taking black jobs. It's a disgrace. And I think that we see what President Biden sees as a black job. It's Secretary of Defense. It's the Supreme Court Justice. It's the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States. And so we're going to continue to take that message. And Donald Trump, unsurprisingly, probably doesn't know what any jobs is, given the fact that he left office having created a negative amount of jobs, one of the only other presidents to do that besides Herbert Hoover. So you are definitely going to continue to see our campaign and the president take that message directly to American voters.
Quentin, as you well know, many Democrats have been urging the campaign to intensify its messaging, its vigor, but also put some specific policy proposals out responsive to our times. I want to ask you about a Washington Post story that has just gone up on the Washington Post website that says President Biden is preparing to announce recommendations for major changes to the Supreme Court. Can you shed any light on that?
Look, I'm not going to make any news tonight. I'll leave that to President Biden to do. But I think when it comes to talking about the issues and talking about what President Biden wants to do, I know he's focused on making sure that he's capping housing costs, rent cost increases. I know he's interested in making sure he passes the PRO Act. I know he's interested in making sure that he expands health care coverage and the Affordable Care Act. I know he's interested in making sure that he protects women's reproductive freedoms, continuing to expand on the work that he has done on climate change infrastructure. And so President Biden is going to remain focused on that, but I will let him make the news that he wants to make about any announcements in regards to the Supreme Court.
Quentin Folks, Deputy Principal Campaign Manager for the Biden-Harris re-election campaign. We thank you very much for your time. As we mentioned, today's theme at the Republican National Convention here in Milwaukee, quote, "Make America Safe Again." But actually, how worried are Americans about crime? CBS News polling expert Anthony Salvanto will join us next with insight into that. You are streaming America Decides.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing or bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else.
Major's case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 Hours, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides here at day 2 of the Republican National Convention. Fact: FBI crime statistics show crime is down, and that's also what statistics in major American cities show. But how do actual voters feel about crime itself? CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, joins us now. Answer that question for us, Anthony.
How you doing, Major? Great to talk to you. And here's the thing. Is crime a factor in people's vote? Yeah, for a majority of people, it is. In fact, for a majority, it's a major factor. Having said that, one of the things, as we explain to people, contextualize why you're going to see this conversation tonight, for Republicans, it's even more so. It's 3/4 of Republicans that say crime is a major factor in their vote. And look, a lot of this is going to happen with your favorite candidate, but Republicans do feel that if Donald Trump gets elected, that crime rate will go down, or at least further down, to your point, man.
Anthony Salvanto in New York, thank you so very much. I want to continue this conversation by bringing in our CBS News immigration and politics reporter, Camilo Montoya Galvez. Because, Camilo, as you well know, for Republicans and for former President Trump, one of the prisms by which their voters and the former president view crime is through migrants crossing the border.
Yeah.
Explain to our audience what the facts are, what do we know?
That's right. Well, as you know, former President Trump is yet again making immigration a major pillar to his presidential campaign in his bid to return to the White House. And there have been record numbers of migrant crossings along the U.S.-Mexico border under the Biden administration. That is true, about 8 million migrant encounters. That is a fact. But not every single one of those encounters equals an individual migrant, Major, because many of these migrants are crossing the border multiple times illegally and are being counted multiple times on those tallies. It is also important to underscore that not every migrant who is processed is allowed to stay. The Biden administration has actually, unbeknownst to a lot of people, carried out over 4 million deportations, expulsions, and returns of migrants. So half of those encounters have actually resulted in migrants being kicked out of the U.S., but it is still a major issue. We have seen a recent decrease, a sharp decrease in illegal crossing since President Biden made most migrants ineligible for asylum under that executive action. And since then, we have seen Republicans pivot to another immigration concern, and that is of crime, tying immigration and crime into one issue politically. They are highlighting some heinous crimes, committed by undocumented immigrants here in the U.S.
But statistics show, if I understand this correct, Camilo, over and over, and this is something that I've told that analysts agree across the board, Republicans and Democrats who look at this ideologically, that migrants commit fewer crimes than Native Americans across the board.
The data is not very comprehensive on this question, Major, but the analyses that are available do not show that migrants are committing crimes at a higher rate than native-born American citizens. In fact, Border Patrol data actually shows that criminals make up a very tiny fraction of the people who are processed crossing the U.S.-Mexico border. And anecdotally, I can tell you that most of the migrants I've met here in the U.S. and across the border are people who are fleeing desperate circumstances, whether it's poverty, whether it's violence. They may not qualify for asylum, but they're certainly not criminals or terrorists.
Camilo Montoya Galvez, thank you so much for those facts, that perspective, as always. As the GOP rides into day 2 of the Republican National Convention, they feel a kind of wave of enthusiasm. They feel a little wind in their sails. What the party's faithful is saying about Vice Presidential pick J.D. Vance. That's next. You're streaming America Decides.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail.
What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable.
The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides from the Republican National Convention right here in Milwaukee. The music you hear behind me being played, and I want to let you know, the band is called Six Wire out of Nashville. And I got to tell you, as a cover band, they're pretty good. I want to be joined here by Steve Daines, Montana Senator, and most importantly, the chairman of the Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee, responsible for protecting Republican incumbents and creating more Republican incumbents. Great to see you, Senator. Thanks for the time.
Good to be here.
Talk to me about where you see the momentum for this party, for this ticket after day one of the convention.
Well, I'll tell you, you can sense the enthusiasm, the excitement, the unity as this party is really coming together behind President Trump and now as Vice President nominee J.D. Vance. But I tell you, I think the emotion here coming off of the assassination attempt on Saturday, it can't be overstated. You know, there was that incredible moment Saturday where, you know, assassin's bullet was a quarter-inch off of either making this a memorial service or a national convention. I mean, it was a quarter-inch separated, one of two outcomes here, and here we are, thankful for God's protection on President Trump and the fact that we can be here, nominate him as our presidential nominee, and win in November.
Good news for former President Trump, tragic news for one victim and 2 others who were wounded and are still holding on to life.
Look, it was a fire chief, lost his life, an innocent, somebody going to a political rally.
Right.
And nobody would have thought you go home dead. And then you had the 2 other rally goers there that are still wounded and healing up.
What effect do you think that will have on political campaigning for the rest of this cycle, Senator Daines?
Well, clearly it changes the whole security posture.
And not just for the former president and President Biden, but for senatorial candidates.
Yeah, well, I mean,
are you having conversations about that?
Well, I think there'll be a heightened security presence at events and so forth. But look, democracy is going to continue to move forward. We are proud of the fact we have a nation here. We have access to our elected officials. And, we had, a deranged individual in Pennsylvania that tried to take out the President of the United States. We're going to move forward here 3.5 months. So we want to make sure the voters expect to interact with their candidates, interact with elected leaders.
Senator Daines, when you talk about unity, do you mean intra-party Republican unity, or do you mean something that is an appealing message outside of the Republican Party?
Yeah, well, I think step one is always to unify a party, and we are unified. I can't say that was true a year ago, but now the party is coming. We've got Nikki Haley speaking. There's an example of bringing unity together, Ron DeSantis. And so the party is unified. I think President Trump has an opportunity on Thursday night now to expand that unity and think about unifying the nation. The country is yearning for a strong leader and one that will bring a unifying kind of message. And what I've heard from President Trump is he tore up his speech he planned. We're going to have a different speech on Thursday night.
On our air last night on CBS special coverage of this event, Michael Whatley, the party chairman, Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia, both told us that they were told by President Trump to rewrite your speeches. Will Senate candidates who are appealing for voters tonight have rewritten speeches tonight?
Well, look, I think there's always a contrast that needs to be painted clearly around the positions. Let's keep it focused on policy, not on personality. And I think that's what our Senate candidates will be talking about, because the policy gap here is large in terms of visions for this country. The candidates have every right to paint that contrast, but let's do it in a way here that's focused on policy and not personality.
Former President Trump in this very campaign has described Democrats as communists, Marxists, fascists, who are criminals who steal elections and try to destroy the country. Is that the kind of rhetoric you see receding after this moment in Saturday in Pennsylvania?
Well, the rhetoric cuts both ways on that in terms of both parties, but I hope there will be a temperature decrease. The country is looking for that. And leaders have a task here of setting the tone, setting the temperature. As we say, we should be more thermostats than thermometers. We can take the temperature down.
Talk to me about J.D. Vance and very important Senate campaigns in Milwaukee, Wisconsin here. Obviously, Milwaukee's in Wisconsin, and Michigan, and Pennsylvania.
So, J.D. Vance is somebody I got to campaign for back in 22. Got to know him very well as a colleague. J.D. Vance brings a couple of things. Number one, my father's a Marine, but he said J.D. Vance will be the first U.S. Marine to serve as vice president. Our veterans will certainly rally behind that. But J.D. Vance has a great American dream story. Really growing up on the other side of the railroad tracks. Of course, his story that's been a New York Times bestseller, coming from poverty, divorced parents as a toddler, raised by his mom's third husband, goes to Ohio State University, goes to the Marine Corps, and he'll tell you that straightened him out. And then on to Yale, very, very bright. But here's, I think, the appeal that J.D. has. He appeals to what we call lunch bucket Democrats. So Democrats that I grew up with in Montana. My grandpa Daines was a diehard lunch bucket kind of Democrat. J.D. Vance would have an appeal to somebody like that. They feel like they've been left behind by the Democrats' agenda.
Bigger than President Trump or complementary to President Trump?
I think it complements, but I think his unique story is something that very few members of Congress have. And I'll tell you,
certainly President Trump doesn't have.
He doesn't. So Trump has the appeal, but I think J.D. Vance has the story. He can uniquely relate to those voters. But look what it does in Ohio. I got to believe Sherrod Brown was not happy to hear that J.D. Vance is going to be the vice president, because J.D. Vance knows Ohio. That's going to put, certainly give a spring in the step there, Bernie Moreno, candidate in Ohio. But look at places like Pennsylvania, like Michigan, like Wisconsin. Again, lunch bucket Democrats looking for a home. J.D. Vance provides that kind of relatable story.
Steve Daines, Senator from Montana, chairman of the Republican Senatorial Committee. Thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Glad to join you.
Former President Trump's primary rival, Nikki Haley, will take the RNC stage tonight. That's a bit of a shift. We'll have a preview next on America Decides.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
On 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides from the Republican National Convention here in Milwaukee. The house band, Six Wire from Nashville, continues to play. Nikki Haley will speak tonight at the convention. That was after refusing, at least initially, to endorse former President Trump when she dropped out of the race for the Republican nomination. I want to bring in Matt Gorman for analysis. Matt's a Republican strategist who served as a senior advisor to another candidate who briefly challenged former President Trump, Tim Scott. Matt, your analysis of Nikki Haley, how important tonight, what kind of reception do you expect the former UN ambassador for President Trump to receive here?
I think it depends what she says, but I think it'll be a pretty warm reception.
Do you think it'll start kind of like golf claps?
Yeah, well, no, there'll be a little tentative.
A little hesitant,
yeah. They'll get into it. Between her and DeSantis, the message is trying to get people in the camp that might have not voted for Trump in the primary, bring them in during the general.
And what is the message that helps those people do that? What is the crossover messaging? What does that sound like?
I think more than anything else, is you might not love Trump, but it's immigration, crime, the economy, the things that cross over all across, not just our party, independents too.
When you talk about the economy, the Biden campaign, with some justification, says there's more job creation under President Biden than there was under President Trump. There's better stock market performance under President Biden than President Trump. And GDP growth is higher, aggregate, over President Biden than President Trump. You answer inflation, inflation, inflation.
We do. I mean, look, I work for Mitt Romney. I remember going back with the statistics, and it doesn't hit the same way, right? When people are paying more at the grocery store, they feel it in a very acute way that showing them a chart doesn't penetrate the same way.
I want you to hit that again. You live this in politics. You live the messaging cruelty of having statistics going up against feelings and impressions.
Absolutely. Statistics can only take you so far. Trotting out a bunch of economists to, say, a single mom in a swing state who's paying more for gas or groceries.
Or insurance or rent.
Or can't buy a house because the interest rates are too high. It just does not work. Trust me on this. Romney in his Bain history tried. God bless him. It just doesn't work.
How about crime? The stats also say that violent crime is down, and yet perceptions are exactly the opposite.
I think it's also not just violent crime. It's the lawlessness. If you go around the streets, the deodorant's locked up at the CVS. There's homelessness. It's not violent crime always per se. It's a feeling of lawlessness on the streets.
Matt Gorman, thank you so very much. We appreciate it. Thanks for your time here. With the Republican presidential ticket set, well, here's a question. How will the Trump-Vance ticket, that's the new one, impact down-ballot races, House and Senate races? That's next. You're streaming America Decides.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this.
What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that? Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
This really
Is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean?
What does that mean in
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened? Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has that glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America.
We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish that you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh, really good.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
If we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail. What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party? Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
When people say who's first to get in the morning, that would be me. Morning news matters because it sets the tone for your day, and it's a way of getting you started.
Day to day, that first draft of history, it happens right here. We're going to uplift you. We're going to send you out your way. We'll take you places. We teach you new things. And we make you feel like, you know, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
Welcome back to America Decides. Our friends at the Cook Political Report recently shifted 6 states toward former President Trump in the Electoral College ratings. The nonpartisan political forecaster is looking at how this Republican Party edge for Trump might impact down-ballot races across the country. Aaron Covey and Jessica Taylor from the Cook Political Report join us now. They're both here with me in Milwaukee. Aaron, I want to start with you. Any sense, and I know it's early days, but how this convention, J.D. Vance, the events of the last 3 or 4 days might have an effect on House races in the 2024 campaign?
Right. It's really hard to say right now. We don't even know the full effect of Biden's debate performance on a lot of these House races.
Because the polling is so infrequent in House races.
It's so infrequent, and you're working at a really micro level. And so we do know that for the whole cycle, Biden has been a drag on House Democrats. He's been pretty consistently underperforming them across polls and Republican polling, Democratic polling, nonpartisan polling. That has been clear from the beginning of the cycle. The question now is how much of a drag is he, and is he going to make it impossible for Democrats to flip the House?
Which is, of course, a huge priority for Democrats.
Right.
Remind our audience how close the margin is and how many seats fall into a general categorization of competitiveness from the Political Report's vantage point.
Yeah, so we have currently about 24 seats in the toss-up category.
24, roughly.
24, roughly. But Democrats only need to net 4 seats if they're going to take control of the House. So that
the gain
should
of 4 seats switches control.
Yep. Should be very doable. There are 16 Republicans who sit in seats that Biden won in 2020. The issue now is that a lot of those districts, Biden's probably not going to win. I talked to one Democrat who said he was expecting that Biden probably could lose as many as half of those now. So now you're looking at a scenario where Democrats are having to overperform the top of the ticket, which is a difficult thing for members of the House to do.
Excellent. Jessica, I want to ask you, because of what we just talked about, House races much less frequently polled than Senate races, any sense of the impact of the last week or so, or maybe even going back to the Biden debate on some of these key Senate races?
We do see more frequent polling in Senate races, but I think just because of the timing of the debate, where it happened the week before the 4th of July, I think to see how, if Republicans get a bump out of this convention, and then obviously what happened on Saturday, how that could factor into it. But what we know is true is that Senate Democrats, at least, they are outrunning Biden significantly. We had one poll out recently here in Wisconsin, one of the major Senate races, with Democrat Tammy Baldwin running against Republican Eric Hovde. She was outrunning Biden by 12 points. Now, is that sustainable? Is that how much she needs to outrun him by? I'm not sure that is sustainable if some of this sort of comes down, but the question is, in other states like Montana, Montana and Ohio, that are the two most vulnerable. Montana is a state that Trump won by 16. I've been talking with sources here in Milwaukee, and they definitely think that he can win it by more than 20 points. In Ohio, where Sherrod Brown needs to outrun Biden, in a state that Trump carried by 8 points twice, they absolutely think that's now in double digits. So I think the more Biden struggles, it just raises the bar for the political gravity that a lot of these Senate Democratic incumbents have to outrun the president by.
And in light of that, what you just said, Jessica, is this dynamic, which is of the moment, I grant you, bringing any Senate races into the realm of competitiveness that didn't look competitive maybe 6 to 12 weeks ago?
I would say I'm keeping an eye on some that are a little bit in the margins as we see some tighter presidential numbers. New Mexico is one I'm keeping an eye on. You have Nella Domenici there, who is the Republican nominee. Her father was Pete Domenici, the longtime senator there. We are seeing some closer polling numbers there with her running against Martin Heinrich. We still have that one rated solid Democrat, but if we continue to see closer numbers, that's what I'm going to be looking at in the coming weeks.
And Aaron, I want to ask you, is there anything that you are detecting from Republicans or Democrats in terms of advertising or messaging in these House races that shifted in the last week or two?
So I think there is definitely a shift with House Democrats because they're now at the point where they can't be running with Biden. They're going to be focused on running against Trump and against the Republican Party. So there has, from the beginning of the cycle, been a lot of focus on the issue of abortion, where many members of the Republican Party are out of step with the majority of Americans on this issue. So you see them going hard on that. Also, Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation's policy proposals have gotten a lot more attention in House races over the last week or so. So I think we're going to be shifting to more of kind of a maybe check and balance message now that it looks more and more likely that Republicans would take control of the Senate and Trump is winning the White House.
Jessica, very quickly, about 45 seconds. Do you imagine that check and balance messaging might also crop up in some of these Senate races where Democrats are talking about, hey, protect the seats in case former President Trump is reelected?
Absolutely. I think that when you have such a slim margin, Democrats could win every single Senate race, though, and it wouldn't be enough, though, if Trump wins the presidency, because then Vice President Vance would be the tiebreaker. So even that check and balance message, you could keep their numbers down to a Republican majority. But I still think, again, the calculus there is just so tight in what is essentially a 50-50 Senate, with West Virginia almost solidly flipping to the Republican column.
Great to have Jessica Taylor and Aaron Covey with me here in Milwaukee. Thank you so very much. That does it for me, at least for now. I will be back at 7 p.m. Eastern. CBS News 24/7 will bring you continuous coverage of the Republican National Convention right here from Milwaukee. The Daily Report with John Dickerson starts right now.
Welcome to the Daily Report for July 16th, 2024. I'm John Dickerson. A ladder, a 2-minute warning, and a shooter on the roof right over their heads. More details are coming in on Saturday's failed